Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started with a public safety briefing from Washington, D.C. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. We are in the John Wilson building, the City Hall in the District of Columbia, and I am joined by members of my cabinet, public safety team, regional public safety leaders, and I'm surrounded by members of the mayor's office of the mayor's interfaith council and other religious stakeholders in our city, including Reverend Donald Isaac, Reverend Sidney Fowler, Imam Abdul Malik, Imam Talib Sharif, Reverend Andre Towner, Reverend John Molina Moore, and Doran Exington from the Anti-Defamation League. We were together a few days ago at Us Israel, a congregation in our community, to talk about how we as a community would stand together with one voice against hate and hateful speech, hateful acts, anti-Semitism, racism, and stand together united to love. We talked, and you heard from our Chief of Police, Peter Newsom, who you will hear from in just a few minutes, about how the city would prepare for First Amendment demonstrations planned in our city, counter demonstrations also permitted, and make sure that we ensure the safety of Washingtonians, our visitors, and our city. And I am very pleased today to be able to stand here and let you know that we think we were largely successful in making sure that those First Amendment activities were able to happen, and we maintain peace and order in our city. You also I am also joined by our fire chief, our Homeland Security Director, the director of our Office on Human Rights, our director of Public Works, who also play key roles in ensuring the safety of our city when we have significant events in our city. We talked just a few days ago about how we would be prepared to keep people safe, but also prepared to protect the values that are so important to us. So I wanted now to turn to Chief Newsom. He will be able to summarize the operations for the day, and then we can take your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Bowser. Good evening. I'm Peter Newsom, Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department. I think it's extremely important for us to note that Mayor Bowser returned from an extremely important international trip to be here today. If that doesn't say I care about my city, I don't know what does. Thank you again, Mayor Bowser. As we discussed a few days ago prior to today's events, there's no city better equipped to facilitate large-scale events than Washington, D.C. Today was an example of a well-executed plan to safeguard people and property while allowing individuals to exercise their First Amendment rights. I'd like to acknowledge all of our partner agencies that assisted in today's event: the U.S. Park Police, the U.S. Secret Service, the Metro Transit Police, the Fairfax County Police, the Arlington Police, the Virginia State Police, and the multiple district government agencies that the mayor mentioned. Each of these agencies played a crucial role in today's events and deserves recognition. It's important that I also take some time to thank the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department, with particular thanks to Assistant Chief Jeff Carroll, who's here, and his team, who worked so hard to ensure our city remains safe today. One thing folks sometimes forget is that police officers are human too. We asked our officers to put aside their own personal feelings today to handle this event. Not only did they do it, but they did it with professionalism and class. An event like this has a high probability of injury and possibility of even death, as we saw in Charlottesville just 1 year ago. No one was injured today in the District of Columbia, and nobody was killed. MPD was able to have a full deployment of officers and resources to facilitate this event because of the mayor's order, without compromising safety in our communities that we police every single day. As I spoke about a few days ago, our main goal today was to maintain separation between the groups. History has shown that when these two groups have gotten together in the past, it often results in violence. I believe we were effective in executing that plan, and we did not see any violent confrontations that we have seen in other cities. There was one arrest today associated with the event. Arrested a short time after 5 p.m. was 44-year-old John Mulligan of Pennsylvania after he assaulted a man. The suspect approached the victim and pepper sprayed him in the face. The suspect was immediately apprehended. He was found to be in possession of a slingshot, large shards of glass, metal bolts, and stones. The arrest report will be available through our public information office. And now we can take any questions that you all may have.
Chief, one question leading into the rally was whether the people participating in the Unite the Right rally were going to have an escort or their own sort of, not private security, but you all issued that statement saying we don't provide private security to anyone. There were some reports, I guess, that they were escorted. Could you clarify what exactly happened? Was this an escort? You know,
yeah, just good question, Darcy. Just like I spoke about this past Thursday when we talked about this, there was no escorts. There was no special accommodations. What you saw today, every single action by law enforcement today was to ensure separation. You have to keep these two groups separated. If you read the report of the critique of the Charlottesville events, which resulted in violence, resulted in a young woman losing her life and 19 people being struck by a car, as well as multiple people being beaten. That was a result of a failure to keep these two groups separate. Our plan and law enforcement's plan today was to ensure separation, and I think that's why we were able to come out of this thing today with no injuries and nobody being killed.
To your point, you guys did a phenomenal job, especially with the group that we had here. But at the same time, this is a group that had, because of their actions and the things that they did in Charlottesville, it cost someone their life. So how do you guys okay a permit to let them come in your city, knowing that history, because you brought a lot of the point that this is what they did, but you guys gave them a permit anyway?
So I didn't give anybody a permit. The First Amendment allows for the National Park Service to issue permits. A permit was issued. So our role in law enforcement was to ensure that this went on as safely as it possibly could, and I think that's what happened here today.
Chief Newsom, can you elaborate a little bit on Mulligan's arrest? Was he a part of the counter-protesters, or was he with the white nationalists?
I don't know for sure what the arrestee's designation was or why he was there. I do know that he was involved in assault, and he had some items which were suggestive that he was trying to hurt some folks out there today.
Chief, can you confirm where that incident occurred? Was it around 14th Street?
I want to say 1300 block of New York. That's where it happened, 1300 block of New York.
Can you share any information about another alleged pepper spray attack that happened around 14th Street?
With officers?
Yes.
Yes, there was a pepper spray deployment in the area of, I believe it was 13th and G Street. A group approached officers that were on motorcycles. They got very close to the officers. One of the officers looked like he was being pushed up against the motorcycle, and he deployed his pepper spray. We will investigate that incident to see if that use of force was appropriate.
Thank you.
Other than that, I'm not aware of any other uses of force by police officers today. I'm not aware of any. Yes, sir.
I saw multiple incidents of police officers getting yelled at by crowds. In some cases, sort of black officers being yelled at by black protesters, and real, a lot of really personal abuse. You spoke of setting aside personal feelings. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the tightrope that?
Yeah, it's illustrated today, but oftentimes our police officers take that kind of verbal abuse, and it amazes me the amount of personal restraint and professionalism they show under those circumstances. Most of the folks that are sitting in this room can't even imagine what that's like. So they did take a lot of abuse. They are human. And it wasn't just the Metropolitan Police, it was the Park Police and the other agencies that you see represented here today that were willing to do that. And their ultimate goal was to make sure we had an event where nobody got hurt. And so, the folks out there on the lines take all that verbal abuse, but to be able to stand up here today and know that nobody was killed and nobody got hurt in our city is a little sense of pride there for our folks.
Chief, I know this is something that you had said you had been in the planning stages for a very long time. The permit application indicated 200 to 300 people would be attending the rally. People are saying about 24 showed up. But obviously a lot of money was spent, a lot of resources are out there for, a couple dozen people. Could you just comment on that and the lack of showing here and all the resources that went into providing for this event? And it basically petered out before it even started.
I don't know. I don't know if I would say it petered out. It was a very significant event today. We had thousands of protesters that we hear in our city. And like I said before, when these two groups have come together in the past, and I don't think size really makes a difference, we have seen violence. You need that number of officers to maintain order and make sure nobody gets hurt. The other thing to remember is, even though the permit was for 400, we don't know how many other folks of that mindset might have descended upon our city. Down in Charlottesville, the night before their rally, there were hundreds, maybe even thousands of folks that descended upon the city, and that could happen here as well. So, you always have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And we were planned and we were ready.
Do you have any numbers to suggest how many police were out there and how much it cost the city today?
I don't, but I think they're still calculating the numbers of the cost, and as soon as we have that, we'll make it available. It cost a lot.
Any final tally on the number of white nationalist protesters there were? It looked like about 18.
I didn't count them personally. I think I've heard a couple estimates of a couple dozen or so.
Can you confirm how many officers were on duty today?
I don't have those numbers in front of me. If you want that information, I'd be happy to give it to you.
Chief, how complicated was your job today, seeing a lot of the counter protesters without really a planned route, going back and forward? I saw a lot of police cruisers and vans having to back up to big crowds and whatnot.
I think it went remarkably well. We've managed large demonstrations here in the city before. Some of them are more difficult than others. I want to say that today's events went really well. Our office, this was a very fluid plan. We had a lot of countermeasures in place in the event we had to change up. We did have to change up a little bit along the way, but at the end of the day, I think it went remarkably well.
I saw police, I was following along the protests of the counter-protest after, and I saw police sort of intervened at 13th and G, and I believe that's where the pepper sprays happened. Why there? Did you guys see signs that something else may have escalated? Why did they had been going for blocks at that point?
Whenever we have large groups going through the streets, we have police officers monitoring them. Why they stopped at 13th and G, I don't know. Well, thank you all. Does anyone, is that it? Last question.
There was a weird little postscript around 7 o'clock that I witnessed where it looked like about 5 or 6 white nationalist protesters who were kind of late to the party pulled out like a "Don't Tread on Me" flag or a "Pepe the Frog" flag or something, and kind of got engulfed by counter-protesters and ended up basically like hiding behind police lines.
Right.
They weren't quite sure how they were going to get out.
There was a group. There was a group that appeared to be white nationalists, a very, very small group, and we had officers that were able to keep those folks separated. Just like I had mentioned earlier, we had police officers all over the city because we weren't sure if others would be coming in from other parts of our city. So that was an example where having officers being Johnny on the spot worked very well for us.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Mayor Bowser, really quickly, this is mostly a question about Metro. Some people were concerned that the white nationalists may have gotten a private car on the Metro. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I can't really talk about Metro operations, but I would just echo what the chief has said, that our approach, and we feel strongly that it led to a relatively peaceful day and outcomes today, was to keep groups separate.
Does anyone have any idea how, or I'm sure someone does know this, but how Kessler was able to exit and his group was able to exit Lafayette, kind of escaping the counter-protesters? What exit did they take and how was that planned?
So There was a sense, initially the plan was for that group to leave the way that they came. There was a sense that tensions were rising over the course of the day. We had an alternative plan to get that group out of our city as quickly as possible. When we saw tensions were rising, we executed that plan and were able to get them quickly out of the city.
Thank you, ma'am.
What was the plan?
Thank you.
Can you say what the plan was? How did you get them out?